All right, once again, thank you for joining.
And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Orpheus Douglas. I'm a data privacy and IT security professional and founder of OCAD Consulting. Throughout my work history, I've worked with multinational teams at companies like MC Systems, where I served as a business analyst for an international banking platform, and at AVG Antivirus, otherwise known as Avast Antivirus, where I aided in protecting millions of business users worldwide from cyber threats. Most recently, I was the data privacy manager for the Grace Kennedy Group, where I led initiatives across subsidiaries to prepare them for the Jamaica Data Protection Act, or JDPA. My aim is to help businesses, especially small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, to not just survive, but thrive by protecting the trust of their customers through proper privacy and security practices. Today, I want to take you through the hidden threats to your business's data and how to stop them. This session will last approximately 45 minutes, and then we'll have about 15 or 20 minutes for your questions. So please write them down and we will address them at the end of the session. Once again, I thank you for joining, and let's dive right into it.
So, why does this matter? Why is it urgent? Well, in today's world, data is known as the new oil. He who controls the data controls the world, right? And just like you'd never leave your bank vault open, you can't afford to leave your data unprotected. Globally, as you can see, the average cost of data breaches is approximately 4.5 million US dollars, according to IBM. And in the Caribbean, cybercrime is costing our region about $1 billion annually. And here's the shocking part: 65% of attacks are now targeting small and medium businesses. Why? Because small and medium businesses are most vulnerable. Hackers only go after banks and government, some would say, but that's not the truth. Criminals go after the easiest targets, and SMEs, more than likely, would have weaker defenses. So imagine you run a small retail store or e-commerce online. If ransomware hits and it disables your payment platform, you're down for about a week. You not only lose revenue, but you also lose customers' trust. Many businesses don't recover from that. So it's not just a big company problem, it's an everybody problem. So let's just go into the regulatory landscape right now, particularly for Jamaica. So this is a little bit closer home. The JDPA, Jamaica Data Protection Act, applies to every entity that collects and processes personal data. Now, this includes large corporations, small corner shops, professionals, online entrepreneurs, you name it, churches, NGOs, you name it. Once you're handling personal data, the Jamaica Data Protection Act applies to you. Now, it requires you to register with the Office of the Information Commissioner. They are the supervisory authority for enforcing the JDPA, or the Jamaica Data Protection Act, which I'll refer to as the Act going forward. It also demands compliance with the 7 data processing standards, which I'll get into a little bit later. The Act is very similar to the GDPR. I don't know if any of you have heard of the GDPR, but that is the General Data Protection Regulation, which governs Europe. That's their privacy law. And it's often referred to as the granddaddy of data protection laws, because it's the most rigid and it's the most cumbersome in terms of far-reaching. And the penalties are not light. I don't want to talk about the penalties of the GDPR because that's up to 20 million euros, right? But we won't talk about that right now. We'll talk about closer to home. Businesses in Jamaica can face up to 5 million Jamaican dollars per offense, right? And in severe cases, imprisonment of up to 10 years. Think of it this way. If you accidentally leak health information, if you're a healthcare provider, that's not just a PR problem. That's a criminal problem as well. So let me break it down a little bit because, you might not understand about the Jamaica Data Protection Act. So there are some words that float around concerning data privacy and the Jamaica Data Protection Act. So I'll get into that so you understand it a little bit better. So you have personal data, any piece of information that can identify an individual. For example, names, phone numbers, IDs, TRN, IP addresses, and so forth. And then you have sensitive personal data that goes a little bit further, falls under personal data, but it's also religious beliefs, political affiliation, we're in that climate right now, sexual orientation, biometric information, and health information, and so on. So if you're a healthcare provider, you have to, your defense mechanisms where personal data is concerned has to be rigid because it falls under sensitive personal data. Then you have data subjects. That's the customer, the employee, you, me. Once we are part of an entity that collects personal data, we're known as the data subject. The data controller. Data control is the business, the entity, which decides why and how the data is used. NCB, Digicel, Grace Kennedy, your business. And even if you're not a registered business, but you operate as such, and you collect personal data for your business practices, yes, you're known as a data controller. Then we look at data processor. Who's a data processor? A third party handling data for you. So like your cloud provider or a payment platform company. So if you use a company to handle your payments for you, they're your data processor. And even OCAD consulting, once I start helping companies become compliant and so forth, I would become their third party. And we'll talk about data subject rights. Now, this is the big one because the Office of the Information Commissioner, as previously mentioned, they are the supervisory authority. They are pushing out information almost daily, educating people about their rights, concerning their personal data. So, and there are some data subject rights. So remember, data subject is the person, the person's data whom you handle. And every data subject has rights under the Act. And some of these rights are, they can ask you to correct the data if it's incorrect, or even delete the data in some instances. They can request a copy of the data, or stop sending me marketing material, and so forth. So as data subjects, they have rights. And let me bring it back home a little bit. You and I have rights. So what are the hidden threats? Now that you've looked at the Data Protection Act, now that you've looked at personal data and so forth, what are the hidden threats? So let's uncover them a little bit. So you can look at staff negligence. So for example, an employee might email the wrong customer list to an outsider. That happened with VMBS some years ago, right? And they got in trouble. But that was pre-Data Protection Act. They got in trouble from a trust perspective. So people were a little bit cautious in how they deal with VMBS. Or the HR department might ask you unnecessary details on a form. Sometimes it's not a hacker, Sometimes it's poor internal controls that cause problems. Then you have the external threats, including ransomware. Now, just to explain, ransomware is when a hacker gets into your computer and then encrypts the information that you don't have access to it anymore. So one day you might turn the computer on and you can't get into anything because it says, it normally has a message, please contact such and such and pay such and such to get back your information. So that's ransomware, and it's happening very often. Then you have phishing. Phishing is when you get a fake information or fake link from maybe your bank indicating that you need to, there's a trouble with your account. Please click here to log in. But it's not real. It's a fake account or a fake page that wants you to do some action, wants you to click on something. Another one is the Nigerian prince. I haven't seen any of those in a while, but the Nigerian prince email was one of those famous phishing attacks. And of course, vendor risk. So if you work with somebody, or let's say you get a provider to handle your payment platforms, but they aren't taking care of their security. They aren't putting in the regular controls that they need to put in. And whatever customers you handle through them become compromised through them, then you're at fault actually, because you should have vetted them carefully enough. And we'll get into that a little bit, but third-party threats exist. So you have to do the proper vetting of your third parties. What security controls are they adhering to the Jamaica Data Protection Act and so forth? Regulatory threats. So once again, are you compliant? So, and these are very real because with regulations, you can face fines. There are other acts, not just the Data Protection Act. They are like the Cyber Crimes Act and so forth and so on. So there are other laws that govern regulation. So for example, the financial sector has a slew of them, right? So if you're dealing with a financial entity and they're not adhering to a lot of these acts, a lot of these laws, then that's also a vulnerability. And of course, you have criminal threats. Somebody can grab your phone and run away with it. Was your phone encrypted? Did you put on a password lock on it? Fingerprint? That's an act. And in this day and age, that's a very increased threat. They can break into your house and steal a laptop. You know, was this information backed up? Environmental threats. It's hurricane season. Are you prepared for a storm? Earthquakes. If one were to come now, God forbid, would you be safe? Would your data be safe? And any other natural disasters that might happen. So you have to think about, how do you protect, as a business person, how do you protect personal data? Not just the company's personal data, but the customer's personal data as well. So let's talk a little bit about ransomware, because that's the big one. Now, ransomware, the average recovery cost is, as you can see, 1.5 million US dollars, right? This is not just for ransom. This includes downtime, lost customers, and so forth and so on. And of course, cybersecurity ventures projects that by this year, 2025, cybercrime will cost businesses globally $10.5 trillion, with a T, trillion dollars annually. I'll give an example. For example, a small distribution company in the Caribbean was hit by ransomware. They didn't have any backups. They lost invoices, customer records, contacts, everything. The ransom demand, 200,000 US dollars. They couldn't pay. Within 6 months, they had to shut down. I remember when I was at Avast, I dealt with some Australian businesses and a ransomware hit. And of course, it encrypted all the information on this particular vendor's, particular customer server. So he called and he wanted to restore them. So we said, the only safe bet is to restore from your backups. I said, do you have any backups? He said, yes, but they were also on the server. So that's a big problem, because the hackers found the backups on the server and encrypted that as well. So we have to be smart whenever we're dealing with customers' data. So inadequate security doesn't save money. It costs you your entire business as well. So we have to be careful. And of course, if you're an SME, you're particularly at higher risk. So put the necessary controls in place. So let's look at some best practices that you can help to protect your business. You can implement to protect your business. And if you need assistance, OCAD Consulting is here for you as well. Multi-factor authentication. So it's simple, but it blocks 99% of common account hacks because it's not just a one method of authentication. You have to go through multiple layers. So it's very effective. Regular backups, as I gave in that example, ensure the backup is not on the same machine, but it's offsite or it's somewhere else that is not vulnerable. Encryption, so you can encrypt your data. There are encryption mechanisms that OCAD Consulting can help you with as well. So if you have a laptop that needs encryption, you have customers' data, or even a system, we can help where that is concerned. Vendor risk management. Don't just trust your suppliers, verify them. Are they compliant with the law? Are they compliant in terms of data protection? Incident response plans. It's hurricane season. Every year we have a hurricane season. Do we have a plan in place, a disaster recovery plan in place to help in case of a disaster? It's sort of like an insurance policy, you know, ensure that you have maybe a backup laptop, a backup phone, your information is copied to the cloud, whatever the case is. But you have to have a plan. If a storm comes, you can't afford for your business to be shut down for too long, especially if you deal with customers outside of your particular geographic region. And of course, staff awareness training, which is the highest ROI, return on investment. Because when you train staff, they won't be clicking on those links that they're not supposed to click on, right? And we'll get into that a little bit because you have things like BYOD, bring your own device. So staff might be using their own phones and, you know, they might download those games they're not supposed to be downloading and it's on your network and so forth and so on. So you have to train your staff on these things. All right, so there are quick wins for SMEs. Data inventory is one of them. So once you know what you collect, that's a win for you. A lot of businesses don't know what they collect. When I was working at a particular organization, it's not Grace Kennedy, but other organizations that I've worked at, they did not know what kind of data they're collecting, or worse yet, where it was. So if I were to ask them, you know, how many customers, what's the customer database like, whatever, they don't know. Know your data, know what you're collecting. So that way you can know how to safeguard it. Privacy by design. So only collect what you need. A lot of these people who are designing forms and they have extra information on the forms, you know, especially the HR department, they need to know exactly what they need in the particular moment. There's a data protection standard called data minimization. So minimize the amount of data you collect. Don't collect everything. You don't need everything because the more you collect is the higher the risk. Run phishing simulation and awareness training. OCAD Consulting can help with that as well, especially with the awareness training. And of course, annual and privacy audits. Always do a checkup, check on your systems. Don't just assume that it's one and done. We are living in a global landscape. Things are changing. The threats are evolving. So let us adjust accordingly, assess the controls we have, and then adjust accordingly. So future-proofing your business. Privacy and security are not just about avoiding fines. They're about building your customers' trust. When your customers see that you respect their data, they're more likely to do business with you, especially if you do business internationally, and they'll stay loyal. Regulators are moving from advice to enforcement. So, as I mentioned, the Office of the Information Commissioner, they're becoming more vocal. If you look on their social media, they're informing you, what you need to do to stay compliant and informing data subjects about their rights. So more and more Jamaicans are becoming more aware of their data privacy rights, and they will hold you accountable if they're doing business with you sooner or later. And of course, cybercrime is evolving. We can't say enough about this. So we have to be vigilant. And sometimes the easiest ways to protect your data is to just know what the threats are. So regular staff training, regular training for yourselves and for your business, and putting in simple controls, as mentioned previously, like multi-factor authentication and backups, can save your business. And remember, privacy isn't a cost. It's your license to operate in the digital economy. So let me talk about OCAD Consulting a little bit and see how we can help you. All right. So OCAD Consulting, founded by me, and we specialize in helping small and medium-sized businesses with challenges. Now, I bring my experience with Grace Kennedy and Avast Antivirus and other entities where I've worked globally with teams and millions of users, right? So we provide JDPA compliance. So we help you with registration, with the registration process. So if you need to register with the Office of Information Commissioner, we'll help you with that. Training and awareness programs. Definitely, we can do that for you. So we can customize training programs and help you train your staff. We can do policies. So we have policy templates and toolkits like DPIA. What's a DPIA? That's a data protection impact assessment. So it's pretty much like a risk assessment of your environment to determine where the gaps are and how to tighten them. That's it. We can also help with checklists, compliance checklists, to once again identify gaps. So these are like gap analysis tools. And of course, IT security advisories. So we can help you with, assessing your environment and advise you based on what our findings are. We do IT audits as well. So if you need help in any of those areas, OCAD Consulting is here. We will provide you with a free 30-minute privacy and security readiness check. So if after this webinar, you want to reach out, I already have the information of some of you when you register for this webinar. So for the rest of you who haven't, you can just message me, go on my LinkedIn page or WhatsApp, and just let me know what your needs are. Or you can message me in the private chat of this webinar and let me know. So after this, we will provide you with a free top 10 data privacy mistakes that SMEs make. You'll get that in the coming days. And this will give you some practical steps that you can apply right away. And of course, you can book a free consultation with me so that I can go through how to help you to get to where you need to, right? Remember, Jamaica Data Protection Act is coming in terms of the enforcement, and hackers are already here, so we don't have to wait. The best time to prepare was yesterday, but the next best time is today. So before we jump into the questions, there are some frequently asked questions that I may answer. You may have them in your minds or you may have written them down, but let me see if I can predict what you're going to ask me. All right. So am I a data controller if I'm not a registered business? Yes, you are. If you're operating as a unregistered entity, but you still have a business or you're still serving customers in some way, you're collecting personal data, then yes, you're a data controller. And as such, you need to register with the Office of the Information Commissioner. What if my vendor causes the breach? You're still responsible as a data controller. So that's why I mentioned prior that you need to vet your clients, you need to vet your partners, and ensure that they're adhering to best practice in terms of IT security, and most importantly, the Jamaica Data Protection Act. How soon must I register? Today, now, or I should say yesterday. Once your business collecting personal data, and remember, personal data, name, phone number, TRN, any of that stuff. And here's a bit of advice. If you don't need to collect personal data, then don't. Some people might be issuing a receipt. If you can just put, if you have controls in place where you can just put a code on the receipt or something, where it's highly unlikely that the customer is going to come back to you asking for a refund or anything of such. But you need to assess your business practices and assess your own risk to determine, if you do need to collect this personal data. If you don't collect personal data, you don't need to register, and the risk is minimal. But there might be other risks, like your business information, your accounting risk, accounting information for your business, and so forth. So you have to look into that as well. And the cheapest, most effective fix for SMEs, training your people. That's the cheapest way. Training your people, or training yourself if you don't have the information. But this is your time. All right. So I'm gonna ask you to drop your questions in the chat, or you can unmute and ask, or raise your hand rather. I have a moderator that will be looking for you and opening your mic. So raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll take them. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your attentiveness. So over to you right now.
So we have a question in the chat if you want to check. So Sarah is asking, do you help businesses through the registration process? And I'm assuming this is registration with the OIC.
Yes, we help businesses register with the registration process. There are quite a few documents that the OIC require. Things like one of them is the record of processing activity. We have a template for that as well. So what that is, it basically lists all the information that the personal data goes through. So if you're collecting it, if you're storing it, whatever you do with the personal information, you have to declare it on a form, and you have to indicate what controls you have in place. But yes, we'll help with the registration process. Any other questions?
I have a question in relation to micro businesses.
Yes.
So most micro businesses are not collecting a huge amount of personal data, except that we may collect data for marketing purposes. So we may collect your phone number, your name, in some cases a birthday if we have a special going on or something like that. Is it necessary to go through all of this if you're just collecting that little bit of information?
The only good thing about the little bit of information is that the risk is low, but the risk is still present. If you have one person's information that you're collecting, that's one person that's at risk. So the short answer is yes, you have to register as a data controller once you're collecting personal data. The thing about it, is that the Office of the Information Commissioner also protects you just in case you're called to court in case you are sued by a data subject. So, for example, you have a data breach and the data subject sues you. Say you're careless with my data. If you're registered with the Office of Information Commissioner, they will be your advocate as well, to say that yes, you put the necessary things in place, you registered with them, you're in compliance, so forth and so on. So that is a big plus for you if you were to go to court. Now, that's one of the biggest risks to personal data, or to entities rather. People can sue you right now. People can take you to court because the act is in full effect. So regardless of the fines and so forth, people can sue you. So yes, best you get protected. I hope that answers your question.
It did. There is another question in the chat. Kerry is asking whether the presentation will be shared.
Yes, I will share it in the coming days. I will also share the recording yeah, short answer is yes, it will be shared. All right, any other questions?
Yes. Chris, will this be an ongoing series with you? Monthly, quarterly, annually, weekly?
I will be doing multiple series because I just barely touched the surface of the Data Protection Act, because you have, like legal bases, you have, the 7 standards, you have the 8 data subject rights, and the nuances. So I will do a series going through this in detail in the coming weeks, because it is important for us to understand what is happening in the regulatory landscape, as well as what's happening in the cybersecurity and the cyber crimes landscape, so that you are more aware of the risks to your businesses and to yourself. So yes, the short answer is yes. And you can follow my LinkedIn page as well. I do post very, very often. I have a blog series on there as well.
Okay. Awesome. Okay.
Thank you. All right. I guess we have no other questions.
Kerry's hand is up.
Oh, go ahead, Kerry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mr. Douglas.
Good afternoon.
So I work at I work at an organization that I would say handles the most personal information. I work at a learning institution.
Right.
And students' information, tutors' information, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
We have been very keen to be compliant, or to work towards being compliant with the Data Protection Act and so on and so forth. However, with all the historical data that we do have, and we've been in existence for over 50 years, and we have those bits of information, person's name now. I mean, some may have passed by now, but what guidance can you provide when it comes on to how long we retain information? My organization is not very into tech, so a lot of what we have is paper-based. How long would you recommend? Because I'm trying to, we're in a time now where we're trying to decide how long files and such should be retained. From your experience and from where you sit, how long would you say a learning institution should hold on to students' information?
Thanks, Kerry. That's a very good question. So the short answer is it depends, right? With a learning institution, you might find people asking for things like their transcripts and records and so forth. And there might be other things that they ask for. I don't know. It all depends on the institution itself. Now, from where I sit, some of the institutions I've worked with had a data retention and custody policy where they define how long they want to keep these records. So they assess everything that they need to assess, and then they determine, okay, we need to keep this for X time, Y time. I need to make mention, though, that the Act does indicate that even if someone passes, you're still responsible for keeping their data safe up to 30 years. All right. So even though you have 50 years, worth of data, some of these people may have passed within the 30 years or within the 50 years. You don't know, right? But you need to get a data retention and custody policy. I can help with that. So one of the things I can do is assess, what the needs are. You might have student asking for all sorts of stuff. Past students going abroad, need records, whatever the case is. So you have to determine, based on your business practices, how long you keep that information. I hope that answers your question, Kerry.
I was typing, sorry, it did. Funny enough, we had somebody who left the institution in 1983 reach out to us recently asking for information. So
look at that.
Yes. So I was before now, I was minded to be guided by the laws that exist. I think there's one that speaks to 7 years, but given the need for student information, transcripts and so on, the references that they may ask for, etc.
Right.
7 years may not be enough.
Right.
And then 30, so I wanted like a number that would help us on the path to one, ridding ourselves of this mountain of paper, as well as to be compliant.
Here's another suggestion. Digitize. You can also scan them in. You can digitize to ensure, because that would definitely save you a lot. And paper in and of itself is also vulnerable. One fire, one flood, and that's it. So sooner you digitize, the better, and it will solve a lot of your problems, I'm sure.
Scanning has been going on, but I've been finding that as with tech, it's not 100% perfect. So there are some files that, for example, from 20 years ago that we can't open because there's a corruption with, I guess, how the file was saved or something.
Right.
So we retain the physical file as a backup then, just in case something like that happens, we can revert to the physical file. Because I mean, I don't want to hijack the session, but I have had experiences where we have tried to access scan files and the file cannot be opened because something happened where we can't open the file anymore. So I guess they don't want to get rid of them, just in the event of needing the information and the scanned version is not available, then they have the physical to revert to.
Yeah, I understand. And that's why I refer to, your business processes. So based on the business processes, you can define what's in that policy outside of what the regulations say, because some regulations, as you mentioned, may say you keep the documents for 7 years, but based on what you might need to keep them longer, but you have to adhere to a particular policy. And then once you have a policy in place, you inform your students, or past students. You make sure that you have some communication mechanism, which can be in the form of a privacy policy or some policy on a website to say, we keep these records for X time, Y time. So it's not just in limbo. Transparency is a big part of the Act. So that is something. So if you want me to come in and give you a consultation, hey, I'm here. All
Thank you.
Thanks, Kerry. No problem. All right. I see a question from Sarah. Small business. I'm a small business service provider. What are the penalties if I am caught in a breach? So it's it can range between $2 to $5 million per breach or per incident, and it can be up to 10 years in jail. So it depends on the incident, and it depends on the courts, right? So let's say there's a breach within your environment, and you have literally no controls in place, and you're not registered with the Office of Information Commissioner. Clearly, you didn't care. So definitely the judge is gonna, treat your situation more harshly, as well as the Office of the Information Commissioner themselves. They're gonna treat your situation more harshly. So if you prove that you did all you can, because I can tell you this, no system is 100% foolproof. No system is 100% protected, but you can do the best you can to limit the risks, right? So $2 to $5 million, up to 10 years imprisonment. But once again, it also depends on the court. So you just want to ensure that you don't fall in that category. All right, any other questions? All right, Sarah is asking, can a client, past or present, request that I remove their data? Most definitely. And this one is a very tricky one. Jamaica does not have a right to erase law, but it has a right to object to processing. So remember, I mentioned earlier about the data protection rights, the data subject rights, rather. So the rights to erase your data, that's part of the GDPR, but that's Europe. Jamaica has a right to object to processing. Now, processing of your data is defined as you storing, collecting, transferring, whatever you do. Anything you do with the data is called processing. So if they object to processing, that's also an objection to storing it. Now, there's a caveat. If removing the data doesn't violate any other law, then go ahead and remove it. So, for example, if you're a financial institution and you adhere to Proceeds of Crime Act, or you adhere to the Credit Act, or whatever the case is, if you adhere to those, then clearly it's not just an easy 1, 2, 3 to delete the data. However, if you don't adhere to any other controls like that, then it's fine for you to go ahead and delete it. Yeah, man, go ahead and delete it. Okay, I hope that answers the question, Sarah. Any other questions before we close the session? There's another question?
Go ahead and unmute, Sarah.
Hi guys. Sorry, I can't type all of this.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so my question is related to you said you'd offer like a service of like a privacy audit.
Yes.
Right. So because small businesses would normally have one, limited budget, and two, we normally use like SaaS software. So it's software that we would find on the internet.
Yes.
To do whatever customer relationship management, invoicing, or whatever else that we need to do. How would you conduct an audit like that, since it's not like our like customized or specialized software? How would you be able to do an audit like that? Because sometimes I may use several different platforms. I may use Gmail to manage my email and my calendar. I may use Zoho Invoice to do my invoicing. I may use JotForm to collect information from clients. I may use Zoho Forms here to do something. So how would you be able to, because like I said, as as small businesses, we're trying to either use free versions or like the smallest tier of software. So
Yes.
how would you be able to do it across those things? Like what kind of information? Just in case, because I need to book one. I handle pretty sensitive data with my clients, very sensitive. So how would you across platforms be able to do, like, what would I need to prepare for like a session with you?
All right. One of the easiest things you can look at, because I also I can relate to your situation, right? Every business is trying to save money. Every business, trying to find the best way to, or the most affordable way to ensure that, the business is operational and so forth. One of the things you need to do is look at your access controls. I hope that answers your question.
A little bit. I just wanted the last part is, what do I need to gather to bring to you? Like what maybe it's like not even like a checklist in terms of what do I need to ensure that when I come to the consult, I have all of these things so that you can, or have majority, or know what I should bring so that you can like or better question, what questions would you ask me in the consult? I guess when you
All
go
right.
to the consult, you'll hear.
Yeah,
But really,
man.
I just
Yeah.
want to know, like, should I have a list of all the applications that I use?
Yes. Yes. So,
Okay.
so I keeping it simple. Know what you have where and who has access to what. That's the simple answer. So if it's Google,
Okay, yes.
what is in Google?
That
Access
answers
to
it.
what is in it. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good start, because that will need to be a part of the ROPA that you submit to the OIC if you register with the OIC. So you have to put that in there. So yeah.
Last question. How often do I need to report to the OIC?
The registration is annually. You only report to them if you have a data breach within the year. You don't interact with the OIC unless there's a breach, or unless there's a change of your data protection officer, which is another thing the OIC requires.
Okay, I promise. Last question. I try to best to I try to say, it's like, hey, how can this really benefit me? All right. So if I'm a small, like I said, small business, we do normally have websites or whatever.
Yes.
On our websites, we may collect information such as like payment information, whatever. How do I know? Is there something that I will see when like there's a breach on my website, like a breach of people's information? Will there something that will be there to notify me that this has happened?
Well, you need to have your own controls to determine that, because remember, it depends on every single entity. So you may have different entities which use different systems. So it's not a one size fits all, right? So what some people do, they set up notifications. If something weird happens, they get a notification, right? So
Okay, so I have no idea where those notifications are, but if I come to you, you can help me find where
I
those
can
are,
I can probably
and
help
we
you
can
do that.
set something. Okay, that's what
Right,
I want to know. That's not
right.
my wheelhouse at all.
But
Great,
but
thank
one
you.
of the things you can use to cover yourself is also a privacy policy. And that is something that OCAD Consulting helps with as well.
Wonderful, 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 wonderful.
All right, no problem. All right, any other questions before I go? Oh, somebody is coming in very late. All right.
How do we get the recording, please?
I'm sorry?
How do we get the recording?
Well, I have your information. And if you haven't registered, please message us in the message direct chat to me, and give me your information. But if you have already registered, I have your email and so forth, so I can send it out when it's ready. All right. Well, since there are no other questions right now, thank you very much for joining. Check your email, check your LinkedIn, check your WhatsApp. I'll be sending some information out, and I'll also be letting you know what next webinar we'll have and so forth. So thank you for joining. I hope you found it informative, and stay tuned again for more from OCAD Consulting. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks again. Take care.
Bye. Thanks. It was great.
Bye-bye.